Madam Mayor. Welcome to the quiet public hearing. My name is Mutusi from Compensation Fund in Pretoria. What I do on daily basis, I'm the manager stakeholder relations. I'm the one who's bombarding your emails with information. Whatever you're getting from Compensation Fund, you're getting it from me. So if you have any query, you can also send me an email, whatever, on that email address. Today I'll be facilitating the process. Let me start by introducing the team that I'm with. I have Advocate Mukashwa from Legal Services. Here in front, I also have Palai Morelli, who's going out there. He's also from Legal Services. They are the one who will be bringing us the presentation on the amendment of the COIDA bill. We also have Mr. Pompito Bakale from Communication. He's capturing the moment for us. So, without waste of time, I'll call Advocate Mukashwa to come and take us through the presentation. Advocate Mukashwa.
Good morning. Yes, my name is William Mukashwa. I'm the head of legal section for the Compensation Fund. I am going to make this presentation about the COIDA amendment bill. Before I could tell you do the presentation, which is obviously going to be in a very high-level presentation, I just want to tell you all to go through what have we done as a compensation fund up to where we are now. One of the reasons why we have decided to do this amendment, we had a national outcry about the certain exclusion in the COIDA Amendment Act. You know, for example, we're talking about the domestic workers who are currently excluded. And then considering the fact that, you know, our sister entity, which is the Unemployment Insurance Fund, has been, you know, including the domestic workers with effect from 2001. So we have been, as the compensation fund, we have been lagging behind when it comes to that. But I'll get into details when I get to that one. And as a result of that, you know, the matters were brought to the attention of the Minister of Labour, who then instructed the Compensation Fund Board to start the process of amending the COIDA Act. So as a result, you know, the Commissioner was then mandated to have a team that will be responsible for drafting of this amendment bill. And then that team was, you know, the team from the legal services of the Compensation Fund. So there were certain, you know, consultations which took place before or during the drafting of the bill. One of the stakeholders were talking about, you know, the National Treasury or the Department of Social Development, Minerals, and all, and so forth and so forth. So during the drafting, the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor was also invited so that they could look whether, you know, the bill would conform with the constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So as a result, you know, the bill was drafted and finalized and the certificate was issued. So thereafter, we were then mandated to say to go to NECLEC. That's where the bill was extensively negotiated. It was negotiated at NECLEC, where the social partners, including business and labor, were part of the negotiation. The negotiations were very extensive, and, you know, we did not finalize, you know, the negotiations as it was envisaged at the time. So after that, luckily, you know, ultimately there was a consensus which was reached between the social partners, that is business, labor, as well as government. and then the bill was then referred to the economic cluster of the Director General. So it was then debated and approved, and thereafter the bill was then sent to the minister so that the bill can be introduced to cabinet. The bill was then introduced to cabinet, it was debated, and thereafter, they were heavy about it. And a go-ahead was given that we should not go for the public participation, the public comments. That is why we are here today, so that we can share the amendments that are here with the public. We have been going through the country. I think some of my colleagues, as we are speaking now, they are in Mpumalanga. We started in Northern Cape. We've been through to Free State, and then I know next week we are now going to Gauteng. Also, with regards to these amendments, they are divided into two. We've got the administrative amendment as well as what we call non-administrative amendment. So I'm going to dwell much where we're talking about non-administrative amendments, because that's where your participation will be required. And also, as the public, you will also be expected to have written submissions to the compensation fund. There is a Gazette number that we will indicate, we will show you at the end of this presentation. So I am now going to take you through the current provisions of the Act and those that we are going to amend, meaning that I will indicate the current provision and what is it that we are going to amend in terms of the new proposed amendment bill. Okay, the table of contents of the amendment that I'm going to take you through will start with the background and context, the amendment, the initiation, and also the timelines. Okay, like I've indicated that the whole process was very a consultative process. We have consulted with quite a number of departments like National Treasury, DG, Economic Cluster, Office of State, Chief State Law Advisors, and all and other stakeholders that will be affected by this amendment. And the most significant amendments that we're going to deal with here, more particularly, we're talking about the inclusion of domestic workers, which were previously excluded. As the Department of Labor, we are supposed to be, the vanguard of labor matters. But with regards to this one, I think we did not do justice to the domestic workers. But we felt very strongly that, it is now our duty to make sure that domestic workers are also included in the COIDA, in the compensation fund. Some of the people were asking, how are you going to deal with the domestic workers? Because, this is a very fast, employment class. So we are saying to them that, because, we've got the unemployment insurance fund. Already the unemployment insurance fund, they've got a very good database when it comes to the domestic workers. Meaning that we're going to piggyback from the database of the unemployment insurance fund when we're going to deal with the question of domestic workers. And already we have started even with the assessment models of the domestic workers on how we're going to deal with them going forward. So I think this is one of the big milestones that, as the compensation fund, once this bill becomes an act, we shall have achieved. And the other one significant amendment is about the rehabilitation and reintegration framework of injured and of the deceased employee in the workplace. Also with regards to this one, I'll get into it when I deal with that. And also, like I've indicated, we will also have what we call administrative amendment, as well as improvement of some of the benefits. We took it as the compensation fund that, we need to improve some of the benefits that we have, because, this is a very old act and we have been dealing with the very same benefits for quite some time. So we said that we needed to improve some of these benefits. And then moving now to the amendment, the current provision as it is now, we're talking about the definition of an employee. the current definition explicitly excludes the domestic workers. So what we are saying is that we are now going to include the domestic workers to be part of the beneficiaries of the compensation fund. This is the ones that are going to deal with. And then moving forward here, we've got what is a financial year. You know, this one, it is one of the administrative amendments that we're going to deal with. In terms of the current legislation, the financial year for the compensation fund starts from the 1st of March until the 31st, the last day of February. This provision is not in line with the current Public Finance Management Act, because in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, the financial year starts from the 1st of April until the 31st of March. So we're trying to align our current legislation with the Public Finance Management Act. Can move on. And then moving forward also, like I indicated, you know, the COIDA Act is a very old act. It happened before 1994. So it has never been amended since then. So there was a word called mandator and a contractor. According to the current definition of these two words, we wanted to say it should be a contractor and a subcontractor. So we're trying to align it with the current dispensation. Instead of using the word mandator, but we're going to use a contractor as well as a subcontractor. And then with regard to this one of serious, the definition of serious and willful misconduct has been removed. You know, currently when the employee is the cause of his own injury or contracting a disease, it is due to him or herself. You know, as the compensation fund, we are not obliged to pay because this person shall have contributed to contracting that injury or illness. So what we're going to do now, we're going to use what we call a fault-free compensation system, meaning that even if you know you are the cause of your own injury, for as long as it was within the working environment, we are saying now that we're going to cover you as the compensation fund. And move on. Okay. With regard to this one, we're talking about the composition of the board. The current dispensation is that, you know, the Director General is the chairperson of the board. So we felt that, you know, it is not fair that as the Director General, you cannot be a referee and a player at the same time. So what we're going to do with regards to this one, we're saying that, you know, we're going to appoint an independent board member, an independent chairperson to be responsible for the chairmanship of the board. And then also here, you know, we wanted to give Network the power to be the people who receive nomination from the constituencies. Because currently, you know, the constituencies, you know, they are able to forward their nomination directly to the compensation fund without going through the network processes. So we're trying to empower network to say that they're the one who should get nomination from the different constituencies, meaning that from labor as well as business, and then they will forward those nominations to us so that the minister should be the one to appoint the board. And also one of the anomalies that we have noticed as the compensation fund is that the current term of office of the board, you know, is unlimited. It's a 4-year unlimited. We've got quite a number of board members who have been in the fund for more than 15 years. And we feel that, you know, there has been some difficulties or problems, as you are aware, about the compensation fund. So we need, you know, also to rotate the board members. So in terms of the current legislation, the proposal is that you can only be a board member for 2 terms of 4 years only. Meaning that after 2 terms, you can no longer be a member of the board of the compensation fund. Okay, with regards to this one, the amendment of Chapter 3 Finance, the Director General is the accounting authority. Yes, currently, you know, the DG is the accounting authority, but at the same time, all the functions that are in the PRED Act are the functions of the Director General. The Director General derives all these powers directly from the legislation, meaning that whatever is done by the Compensation Commissioner, those powers have been delegated to the Compensation Commissioner by the Director General. So we felt that, because this is a red tape, because in most instances, the person who's running the compensation fund on a daily basis is the Compensation Commissioner. So we said that we should rather give all the powers of the DG to the Compensation Commissioner, except Section 18A of Finance, because the DG is the ones to be accountable when it comes to finances. So it is only one provision in the Act which will remain the powers of the DG, which will be Section 18 of the current legislation. But all other functions, if you could look at the Section 4 of all other, where there is a word called DG, will now be removed to become a commissioner should this law becomes applicable. Okay, now amendment of Section 46, subsection 4. This one, that's where we want to improve the benefits, because the current dispensation is that when the employee dies who is receiving a pension from the compensation fund, that pension ceases, meaning that the spouse cannot get it, the children cannot get it. But what we are saying with the current proposal, we are saying that if the pensioner of the compensation fund dies, the spouse can now continue to receive that pension until he or she also dies. It is one of the benefits that we are looking into. And then if there is no spouse, we're talking about the children. The children can also now benefit the pension from until the age of 18 years. So if the child is a scholar, we need proof, and then that can continue until that child finishes his or her school. But we need proof to that effect. And then with regards to the certain compensations to employers prohibited, this is Section 64, as it is now. Our observation as the compensation fund is that there are certain employers who are deducting monies directly from their employees to pay for their assessment, their yearly assessment, which is totally wrong and unlawful. So with regards to this one, we are saying now we're going to impose a fine to whoever employer could deduct money directly from their employees and pay it as an assessment on a yearly basis. It is not the responsibility of the employees to do that. It is the responsibility of the employers to pay assessment on a yearly basis. So, for them to deduct money directly from their employees, it is totally unlawful and illegal. So we're trying to discourage that. Okay, moving forward, notice of occupational disease by employee to the employee. Even with this one, what is our observation was that, most of the employers, actually not most, some of very few employers, they do not report their occupational diseases to the compensation fund. They don't. And the sooner you report, it becomes very easy because, once you report at the later stage, where the disease is now causing havoc in the body of somebody, it becomes very expensive for the compensation fund to deal with that. So we are discouraging the employers who do not report the occupational diseases to the compensation fund in time. We know the reasons why they are not doing that, because they feel that if they report these diseases to us, comes assessment time, that's where the compensation fund is going to hit them very hard. So most of them, they decide not to report, and then it really affects the compensation fund as well as the employees as well. And also moving forward about the appointment of medical advisory panels, this one we're trying to broaden the scope of the medical advisory panel. The current legislation is very explicit. It mentions SAMA, South African medical, and all those things. So here we are saying because it is explicit, it becomes very difficult. If you apply the law strictly, you cannot go to any other advisory, medical advisory panel except those that are mentioned in the law. So we are trying to broaden the scope because there are quite a number of medical advisory panels. So we are removing the names of all those that are explicitly mentioned in the Act to say any other medical advisory panel without mentioning the name. So that is the purpose of this provision. Okay, and then also here the fees for medical aid. This is one of the provisions where we also wanted to broaden it because the current legislation is explicit in mentioning the health organizations that we can deal with. You know, it means that all others we shall not mention in the Act. As the compensation fund, we cannot deal with them, the medical aid. So we'll rather say the healthcare organization instead of mentioning the individual names. And then moving forward, employers to register with the compensation fund and furnish particulars. I think also with this one, it is the responsibility of every employer to register with the compensation fund. And we know that some of the employers are not registering as prescribed by the law. So they will be prosecuted should it be found out that, you know, this employer has been operating, you know, without, you know, notifying the, or registering with the compensation fund. So this one's, you know, a same prosecution of employers who fail, we will prosecute them for non-compliance. And moving forward, also this one of the keeping of the records. In terms of the current legislation, I'm saying that we can only keep a record for a period of 4 years. But with the current proposal, we're saying it should be in line with the National Archives Act, which is 5 years. Okay, and then employment, Section 82, Section employers to furnish return of earnings. This one also, you know, I think I spoke about it initially that, you know, our financial year is not in line with the Public Finance Management Act. And it becomes very difficult, even to some of the employers, to furnish their return of earnings because of the lapsing of the month. So we're trying to align it, like I indicated, from the 1st of March, 1st of April to the 31st of March, instead of the 1st of March to the last day of the program. And then moving forward, Section 84, Section employers exempt from assessment. Remember, in terms of the legislation as we have now, there are certain employers where the law is very explicit also to say that the local municipalities can apply to be exempted from paying assessment to the compensation fund. But remember, when you are being exempted by the Director General, it does not mean that, you know, your employees should not be covered. You have to issue an insurance policy, and also to make sure that, should your employees be, you know, involved in injuries at work or contract some diseases, they need to be covered. Because once you are exempted, there are certain requirements that you must comply with. But our responsibility as the compensation fund, even if you are exempted, we are the one who do the assessment. You know, if you are injured, we are the one who do the calculations and all those things. So because the current legislation is explicit of who can be exempted. So we are saying now that any employer can now apply to be exempted for as long as he can meet or she can meet the requirement provided by the Director General. So it is not only going to be those that are mentioned in the legislation as it is now. Anyone can apply, but you have to comply with those requirements of the Director General. And also here's Section 86, subsection 2, talking about Exchange Act. This law is no longer applicable, and it's not even relevant in the current legislation of COIDA. So we're just removing that. And then with regards to Section 91, review of decision. Remember, when an employee is not satisfied about the decision of the Director General, that person has got the right to object. It goes to the tribunal, an independent tribunal.
So, still, if you're not happy about certain decisions which were made by the Director General, you've got the right to apply for a review of the decision of the Director General. The current legislation, it says that the DG can review his own decision. It can't be. You can't review your own decision, because if you have made a decision, then the review must go to another forum. Like here, we're giving an example of a judicial forum. If you are not happy about the decision of the commissioner, you can apply to the tribunal in terms of section 91. If you are not happy about the decision of the tribunal, you can take the matter for a judicial review. You can take us to the High Court. So with regards to this one, there was some anomaly because the DG is making a decision, and the decision, he also reviewed the decision. So we're trying to correct here to say that instead of saying the DG can review his own decision, the DG can vary his own decision. You know, people can make mistakes. Even, you know, people who are assessing. If you fail at the later stage that you have made a mistake, you are not reviewing your decision. You are varying your decisions. So actually, we're just trying to correct this anomaly. Okay? And then, with regards to this one, Part B, compliance and enforcement. As you are aware, as the compensation fund is a public entity of the Department of Labor, we are relying solely on the inspection and enforcement directorate of the Department of Labor when it comes to compliance. It is not only compensation fund, also UIF and so forth and so forth. But because of, you know, the compensation is a very specialized, you know, field. You know, most of the inspectors are not able to enforce this legislation because of its specialization of part of it. So we are saying here that as the compensation fund, we're going to have our own enforcement section. So in order to have that power, to have that enforcement section, there has to be a provisions that must be in the Act to deal with that enforcement to the employers. Because most of the, you know, when it comes to unemployment insurance fund enforcement, you know, the compliance part of it is about 95%, because they are making use of SARS, you know, to collect their revenue. So, you know, SARS has got teeth, unlike when it comes to other. So with us, you know, we don't have teeth, and most of the employers are not complying with COIDA. We only realize this, especially when it comes to when a person is injured at work, to say that, you know, some of these employers are not complying. So we will have our own compliance and enforcement section to deal with COIDA matters. And then Section 95 is just an administrative amendment where we're talking about stamp duties. We no longer apply this provision in the Act, so we're removing that. It's one of the administrative amendments. And then moving forward, this is one of the most important sections. This is a new section that we are going to include in the compensation fund. It is called rehabilitation and reintegration. You know, currently we've got quite a number of pensioners who are receiving pension from the compensation fund. And the amounts that they get is too little. It's too little in the sense that, you know, most of them cannot sustain themselves with it. So the purpose of this provision is that, you know, if a person is injured at work, that person can be rehabilitated and return to work and earn a decent salary instead of getting, you know, the pension, the small pension that we are paying. You know, there will be 3 forms of rehabilitation. For social rehabilitation, where we're going to support the family with regards, you know, to rehabilitating, you know, an employee. And then we've got vocational rehabilitation. Vocational rehabilitation, you know, we are talking about, you know, providing things like it's a reskilling. You know, if a person has been doing this work, but because this person will no longer be able to do this work at the workplace, this person must be reskilled and do something else other than what this person has been doing. And then the last one is the clinical rehabilitation. where you are talking about assisted devices. If a person will require an assisted device, that person must be assisted. So it is a new section. They are working, the doctors are working on the regulation of this section. And then here we're going to seek or require, the full participation of the employers. The employers must really take part when it comes to this matter, because there will be some incentives when it comes to assessment to all those employers who will be taking part. There will be some debate should it be found out that you are assisting in making sure that this provision is applicable. So the nitty-gritties of this provision, the doctors are still working on it. It will be applicable comes the regulation time. Can you move forward? And then the other issue that I wanted to deal with it, which is I know it's going to be a very thorny one, is with regards to this one, cessation or relinquishment of medical claims. Where we know most of the medical service providers are relying on third parties to get their payments from the compensation fund. And honestly speaking, it has become an administrative nightmare for the compensation fund. And that's where fraud is committed. When people are talking about fraud in the compensation fund, that's where it is. Because the medical service providers will submit their claims to us, and then we will adjudicate. And then some of these, third parties, we don't know where they're getting, some of these, vouchers or claims. They will also come and submit on their behalf. And, it becomes an administrative nightmare for us as the compensation fund. And, we're trying to get rid of this to say that we'll rather deal with the medical service providers directly instead of dealing with the third parties. We know, their purpose, they don't have the interest of, of the compensation at hand. What they are looking at the third parties is, to get a lot of money from the fund. If you go to the compensation fund currently, there is a very huge litigation matters. This litigation, we are litigating against the third parties. People who do not have direct, interest to the compensation fund. They only need, monies and to make sure that, they defraud or, they make sure that, this fund goes down the drain. So we're trying to deal with this anomaly, to say that we'll rather deal directly with the medical service providers instead of dealing with the third parties. Okay, and then I think I've now come to the end of this presentation. What we are asking you is that, this is a high level, we take it for granted that you have gone through the bill itself, because the bill, that's where you get everything. This is just a high level presentation. We are also expecting that, you provide us with the written submission. Written submissions, we are not accepting oral submission because we want to keep a record of what the public is saying. And also when it is time for us to consider those submissions, we've got something in writing. And then to those that have not gone through the bill itself, the Gazette number is here, 41985 of 18/10/2018. And then the closing date for the submission, for the written submission, is the 16th of December. I know it's on Sunday. I think you can now get comments and also some questions.